If you're on Zoom, can you mute for the time being until we introduce you?
Oh, that was another computer.
Okay, so okay, thank you for coming to 5 Points Art Gallery and Studios. If this is your first time, welcome. If it's an additional time, thank you for coming back. Welcome to Signs of the Times. This is 5 Points Art Gallery and Studios 22nd exhibition. So this is a extra special and extra different exhibition that we've done in the past. This not that any other exhibition wasn't taken seriously, but this the subject matter for this exhibition is very near and dear and serious for the participants and actually a lot of viewers and visitors in the room who are from the neighborhood as well. The Signs of the Times is playing on a print song, but these are signal signs, different messages, behaviors that are notifying people that gentrification is coming to their neighborhood. My definition of gentrification, I forgot what I wrote in the press release, and I try to make it lighter than I normally say, is when they use new development, economic development, and other sometimes loaded terms to say they're revitalizing the neighborhood, but those new amenities and resources are not usually made accessible to the people who are in the existing neighborhood. And there are different tactics that help clear out the neighborhood through taxation and other practices, or rising home values, and a lot of other different bullying methods to get people out of their neighborhoods, out of their homes, making families transient, even small business owners in the neighborhoods. It uproots them. It is going on over here and in a lot of areas surrounding downtown here in Milwaukee. But the exhibition covers different cities as well. It's not a Milwaukee germane issue. It's national and actually an international issue. But specific to the US, it's in the center cities or urban areas, which are primarily housing people of color, usually financially vulnerable peoples, and peoples with other vulnerabilities, social and economic vulnerability. And so we have now 16 artists because of some of the storms that have gone on. One of the artists' works got lost in transition or transportation, and so it didn't make it for the show. And that was for Sudeka Terrell. She was previously in the This is America show. She and her husband both will be having solo shows at the beginning of next year here. But there are 16 or 15 artists plus neighborhood association that's around here, 5 Points Neighborhood Association, who have contributed to this this exhibition. And so I'm going to get started because there are a lot of us. All of us are not here. As always, we try to encourage dialogue between the viewers and the artists. So you don't have, this is not a lecture series. You don't have to wait to the end and let everyone ramble on. You can interject, have conversations. The artists can have conversations between each other. And yeah, we'll keep the conversation flowing. So don't feel stagnant, and like if you have something to say, you know, put it out there. If you have questions, put it out there. This gentrification is defined different by who you're positioning in the process. And so some people think positive. The majority, who it has been inflicted upon don't think it as such, or they might be confused about it. They might see the pros and cons to it. So again, these are different signs, signals, things that you may or may not see in your area, or if you drive through other areas, you might see and get notification like, oh, some major changes are coming for the people over here. And so, sorry, I can't see more. I'm gonna start with the person to my right, artist Sierra Berry. I can tell you how I brought Sierra into the exhibition. We're actually in a show together around the corner at the Lorraine Patterson. And when I went to visit the show, I saw Sierra's work. She has 3 pieces in this show, and the work that's similar to the other show that I saw were the picket fences and a coffin. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get this for the show. This is so real. Like, it's killing housing, it's killing this dream. And so I want to start with Sierra. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, your pieces, you can describe them for people who are on Zoom, and then we'll keep it going from there. You might start there too.
Hi everyone. I am Sierra Berry. I'm an artist living in Milwaukee. I'm from Wisconsin. And some of my pieces, so my piece in the back is a suspended roofing shingle holder piece entitled Keys Are Under the Mat. I have a sign in the other room that just simply says 4, and I have 2 pickets that are created in kind of an absurd way. It's hyper protection, but also storage and putting away. And a lot of my work has been surrounded, has focused heavily on home, domesticity, the implications of home life, and my insecurities, or the kind of grappling tension within the home, security, and just exploring the vast experiences that the home can bring to someone. So one piece in particular that I think speaks true to this show is the 4 sign that simply just reads 4. The intention with that work is to show or to invite the viewer to think about a home or a property or a shelter as more than just a transaction. How does the home function on a lot of different levels for a lot of different people in a lot of different areas? And I think that that's something that we should all be considering when, especially developers are coming into an area. These aren't just buildings; these are very special, safe ecosystems for people that are living. So, additionally, the piece in the back, these kind of boulders. The piece is entitled "Keys Are Under the Mat," which is to give some sort of allusion or alluding to some sort of trickery, some sort of predatory practice that I think just looking around we are very familiar with and have witnessed on a lot of. So that's just a little bit about my work and the pieces that I have.
So you mentioned ecosystems, and I'm gonna jump to you, but before Martina, but before I do that, I want to highlight 5 Points Neighborhood Association for our communal piece, and I'm doing that because some of the people want to excuse a little bit. They're not the traditional artists, so the speaking platform is different for them. But I do want to highlight the neighbors that contributed to it, the members that contributed to it. Give them an opportunity to say something or wave if they want. So I'll start with Deidre Stewart. She was a major contributor. Rhonda Gatlin Case, who was an artist as well, lives in the neighborhood, who contributed majorly to it. We have the neighborhood association president in the audience as well. You can't see him, but in the audience, we have some people on Zoom that's just showing themselves. And then also two chairs to my right. We have Lorraine Patterson, who was also a major contributor in helping composes 127 piece of exploitative cash for home visual pollution that we cut down from the area poles in the area. And one of the photographers too documented the protest that we led, one of the protests we led, captured some of that in her photography as well. So you can see it next to the TV over there. But again, we found 127 of these cash for home signs that are in specific areas. They will stop in specific areas too. And so they come up like the wind. And we were not able to count how many zip ties we needed to bind them together and how many holes we punched in it, which is even more than the zip ties used. But it's called the displacement welcome mat. You know, we will happily remove you for cash from your homes. And then you'll usually see signs that will list all your kind of distresses to kind of push you in that direction. So this was a very aggressive piece. I don't remember the measurement of how long the welcome mat or runner is. It's a runner. It has fringe and everything with zip ties. So it's rough. It's exterior material. So it's kind of counterintuitive and a little bit of cynical aspect to it, but I wanted to again to highlight all the contributors there, and there are more than who are present and on Zoom that contributed to this piece. Does anyone have any questions about that piece? I see it in the back. Yeah.
Greetings, everybody. I was just wondering, what do you think this will produce if they were signs that said, I guess it is helping people with what you love. Find out how you can protect yourself from foreclosure in the sense of stopping the city, taking your taxes, we represent you pro bono in a hearing. Would that be right? Legal police to see that that's the type of stuff.
Does anyone want to answer that? The question is, if the signage read something different, like we will help you stay in your homes, we will help represent you pro bono in a legal proceeding on how to preserve and protect your rights and homes, would it still be considered visual pollution? Does anyone want to respond? Oh, no.
I think if we can wait till everybody present, can you hear me? I think if we can wait till everybody presents, and then we can wrap back around, because that question will give us a little time to contemplate, because there's some more questions we could ask about those kinds of signs, as there's a website that points to different areas.
I missed what you said. I'm very sorry. And I'll
Okay. Let me repeat. Let me get rid of the echo. Hold on.
Don't type it because I'm not at the computer. Just repeat. I'll get back to you. I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to reply. Christina.
Oh, I wanted to clarify who the visual language would be coming from. The same people that made these signs, or are you imagining a different source coming in and making these signs?
I actually, because I was reading, I seen the one helping people is what we love. So I see how that is obviously deceptive, and then it's deceptive because it's probably going to be whatever. But you have the sign that actually deceptive. So to be successful in helping, and their success, they can bring your recognition to themselves, but that using the same technique. And the listening to
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was just gonna say if we could possibly wait till all the presenters, and then we could come back, and I can probably pull up a couple of examples of that person is talking about that might help.
Okay.
Okay, And then if you wanted us to talk about the piece, as you've already explained it, but it's, I think I don't know if my screen was shared. She's talked about the several different signs, but I also wanted to let you know that there are several companies and associations, and this is what prompted our community piece. And thank you for your leadership in that community piece. And we've had like New Legacy and the Northwest Association Realty. And then I know everyone has gotten probably some cards like this that have talked about purchasing your home. And then just be on the lookout, and you can call them and tell them to simply stop calling. You're not selling, and it's harassment. The reason I bring that up is because we got these cards, and some of the cards, we've been getting them regularly, were addressed to the wrong person at this address, hoping that it will fall into someone else's hands, in my perception. So that's being an illegal deceptive practice in terms of someone getting it. So the signs are there to show, as she said, when you see the piece, you will see the amount that you are being bombarded with it. And I can share something later about the 7 signs of gentrification if you'd like me to later.
We'll try to
Yep.
I'm gonna repeat what she said, because you all can't hear, and I apologize. But the recording, and I can share this afterwards, you will be able to hear everything. There are cards that also come in the mail to us too, that we've been collecting. And these are, she's also been tracking, or the neighborhood association has been tracking the specific companies that are sending out and posting these signs. And so they are delivered. While there are a few different numbers, they all lead back to only a few different entities, and they are meant to trick, entice, make you feel warm, and bring you in. If time permits later, she says she has found some information on 5 signs of gentrification. We'll put it back in for that. And she started calling them back and saying, like, no, we will not sell. And sometimes they'll send in the cards with different names to that address, soliciting a different person as well. In the show, there is an actual live phone with all of these numbers listed on the wall. It is an interactive piece, so it's not for sale, but you are welcome to support the neighbors around here and call any of these numbers. There are specific directions on the wall about how you can call them and say, we shall not be moved, we are not selling, I will not sell. So that is another piece, and it is tied to this, and then we track, again, all these numbers. Sometimes the numbers will pop up, we get calls, we get text messages, the cards, and these signs, and it doesn't stop. And so feel free to engage in that, but do follow the directions. And you can use the cell phone, not the old vintage phones, forward to that. But it also represents the protection for a lot of older people that get harassed too. So it's a generational thing. And so the cell phone is supposed to be the more modern way, like the younger people are supposed to be out here protecting, but everyone is getting harassed. Now, speaking to ecosystems, I want to bring in Martina Patterson and her piece in the rear, and I'll let you tell the name and explain it, how it ties into the gentrification concept.
Hey, everybody. Martina. This creation on the back right, my right, y'all's left. It is an example of a macro map, which has geographic information on there. It's visually pleasing, so it's not an information overload, but it describes how the climate tension zone in Wisconsin, from an ecological and environmental standpoint, parallel the redlining and edge effect that occurs in nature and with humans. So the circles are willow branches, and those represent specific zip codes within the 15th district. And where they intersect is my zip code, which is 53208. And it is considered one of the most diverse because it's on the edge of where the 53213 and 53212 and 53206 intersect. The little pieces on there are hand sewn yo-yos, which is a stitch that started in the 1920s when women didn't have access to a large amount of fabric. So they could easily carry around little pieces of fabric and make quilts and sustain their livelihood that they were selling around. But the colors of them represent vegetation, impervious surfaces, BIPOC, citizen or community members, and also invasive species and canopy cover. The green plant matter is cattail stalks, and that represents the northern region of where the climate tension zone goes through Wisconsin. So it represents the divide, and I'm sorry, I didn't even say the name of the piece. It's called Divide and Vision, because it is an example of how structural and environmental racism plays a major part and trickles down, and then you see the effects of why we're here today. The northern regions of Wisconsin are far more canopy covered. They have access to more green spaces. There's a lot more vegetation in comparison to the lower half in the inner city. Now, even though Milwaukee lies right in the major part of the conversion, we are in one of the most diverse spaces of vegetation and plant matter. We still have far less plants and canopy cover than, say, Wauwatosa. And the DNR surveyed Milwaukee, which is several 100,000 acres in comparison to about 8,000 acres of Wauwatosa space. And 50% of Wauwatosa is canopy cover, whereas about 30% of Milwaukee's 100,000 of acres is canopy cover. So if that gives you a little more explanation, I hope, as to the divide is deeper than just surface and deeper than just worrying about housing. Like, it's a structural racist system that has come into play. This, how do I say, it's like, it's deeper than what just worrying about housing. So trying to figure out a way to get on the other end of people who are in these authoritative positions and how they designate this tension zone, and also providing access to more green spaces so that in the inner city, we're not on top of each other. And if you drive to Doctor's Park, you can see how spread out and how much canopy cover they have access to, as opposed to us. And another thing that I wanted to add is, in these more densely populated lack of canopy cover spaces, like here we are in this neighborhood, or 50208, because there's a lot of impervious surfaces, the climate is actually 5 to 15 degrees hotter here than it would be if you were in Wauwatosa or near Doctor's Park, for example, which also plays into the crime rate. There's studies that have been done that suggest when there's a hotter, more piled on, densely populated area, crime is higher. So it feels like it's designed that way, right? I mean, in my opinion, if you go to Doctor's Park or Wauwatosa, the climates are cooler and there's less crime. So if there's any specific questions as to which color means which thing, or the plastic, feel free to ask, but I hope that I explain that in a way that makes sense to what you're looking at.
So this side of the exhibition. It's kind of like the exterior side, what you do with, exterior facade, and on the other side is supposed to capture more of the intimate interior, more emotional and sentimental and memory-based destination that goes on as well. But before we jump to the other side and piggybacking off Martina's commentary on division, boundaries, the borders, I'm going to pull in the artist behind me who has some photography pieces in the show, Daniel LZ, who's capturing, he can explain what he's capturing his photos, but some of them are capturing where you straddle these fences of living in the city and the suburb. We are touching a suburb, and one of the issues is there is a white flight back into the urban space, and the downtown development is they're using that as the catalyst. So all the Bucks Arena is the major contributor in these hotels that are popping up, even though our tourism rate is not there, but they want to bring in it's less sustainability, investment for residents and more for people who are not germane to the area. And so again, the pieces that I'm going to reference now are talking about almost like boundary wars and where these signs are being infiltrated by the suburbs and downtown area. But then you want to explain the pieces and even the title.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. All right, we're gonna do that a little bit better. I'm an MC by trade, so my call and response, I'm used to more than that. So we're gonna try better. Good evening. Good evening. All right, that's how I want to hear it. Like she said, my name is Damien Elton, and like I just said, I usually do my art form is usually music. So I was working on an album for the last exhibit. It was called Red. And for that album, I took a bunch of pictures. And as I was looking through the pictures, I was seeing where I was taking the pictures at and what was going on in correlation with gentrification in the neighborhoods. And so those 4 pictures it got me at La Perla on South 5th Street. You got me on 16th and Capitol. You got me on Martin Luther King, and then you got me on 16th and North. All of these places have felt what we would like to call some form of gentrification. There's been some form of, whether it be the taxes increasing in these areas astronomically, because I've done some of the research myself and I've seen it, like on 16th and North, the taxes have gone up like 500% in some of those houses over there, which is crazy. There's no explanation for that. And so one of the explanations that you have is that gentrification is coming, prices going up, move people out. The title of these pieces is called Nzambo, and that is the Congolese word for monkey. That is also the root word for Zambo, which became Sambo for Spanish. It started in Spanish, they didn't have to read it, switched to Zambo. That following me? Am I talking too fast? I talk fast. So if I'm talking too fast, y'all just let me know. Y'all say, dang, slow down, and then I'll slow down. So the faces that are on the pictures, Fatima had this piece of work. I don't know if you all remember what exhibition was that?
It was last year's This is America exhibition where I had pickaninnies in quadrants on plywood.
So if you remember that piece, you'll remember the faces, because that's what it's called, the way they see us, right?
Yeah.
How they see us. And so with that as the backdrop, and that is the idea, the pictures are taken in front of billboards and at places where gentrification is taking place, or these companies or corporations have involved themselves, whether directly or inadvertently, in gentrification in these areas. Like the MLK, the Thrive On one is a big one for us in the fight against gentrification, because it's a building that's going there. It's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, and right behind it is Halliard Park. And Halliard Park is predominantly Black-owned subdivision that was created by Black people for Black people. When they couldn't get into the suburbs, they created Halliard Park. Well, now what's happening in Halliard Park is the taxes are going up there astronomically. I got a best friend, his name is Diamond. Diamond is on one of those pictures over there. He's got a megaphone, he's got a megaphone. Diamond's story is his house is in Hallier Park. His family is part of the Columbia Savings and Loans, it's now Columbia Savings and Loan. His family started that bank. So his family is the reason why Hallier Park is there. But Diamond was also at some point, and this is public record, so I'm not putting his business out there, was facing foreclosure. And the reason why he was facing foreclosure is because his taxes went up. And his value on his house went up like $200,000 in 1 year. That's crazy, right? We can all agree that that's crazy. Even if you want your property taxes to go up and you want to make more money off your house, you don't want to have to do that in 1 year. Go from to that. So just imagine if you were somebody on a fixed income. Diamond, luckily enough, is, you know, he's an educator, he's an assistant principal, so he can navigate that. But if you're on a fixed income, that big of a change is gonna knock you out the box. It's gonna be done. And now they got your house. So that's why we did the picking sample faces on me walking with an African shirt, and because the origin of the word is from Africa and whatnot. But it's to show that this is how they see us. This is what they see when they come in our neighborhoods, when they come in to do these developments where they're not developing them for us, they're developing them for the next people to come through. And so this is how they see us, as monkeys to be moved around. And like my man's got his art with the monkeys on there, I don't know. You can talk on that later, you know what I'm saying? But that's how they see us, and that's how they look at us when they come through as animals or whatever, to be moved around. And you see me walking through, it's like, in my opinion, and me and Fatima had discussions about this, because like I said, I used her artwork in it, so she played an important part in it. It's like, I see it as somebody as just walking, trying to find home, and keep getting pushed out, from places that they want to call home, places that have historically been their home, they keep getting pushed out, and they keep getting gentrified out and developed out. So I'm glad that she did this. This is a battle of war that she's been waging, and we've been along waging with her for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. And this is the culmination, not the culmination, but the continuation of that. So once again, my name is David Elvey. The pieces are called the Zambu, and on 16th Street, on MLK, Mercado, and on Capitol. They may have, you know, I may be paraphrasing the names, because in full disclosure, Fatima name. Like I said, I'm a rapper. I'm an MC. So when it came to this, I was like, okay, do your thing. Whatever you want to name it. And so she did it. But I did come up with something. I did a little research. So don't give her all the credit. So thank you.
I am gonna jump to the artist who is on the face, whose work is on the face of the flyer, and as soon as you come into like the most open exhibition room, you are hit with his signs with monkeys. But before I do that, I'm gonna tell you my interpretation of the Zambu pictures. It is common in development that developers or corporations or organizations or philanthropy people find a token person who might say, look like the people from the neighborhood, or say they're from the neighborhood, and they like that role, and they think they're gonna, rise out of their circumstances and ascend to the elite status of the people using them. And so they use this blackface, this person who come and try to be beguiling to the residents, and oh, I'm Black, or we're very segregated here on the South Side, oh, I'm a Latino, or what have you. I'm gonna come, I'm your friend, but they're being paid to do this. And so the signs are like the people playing that person's playing the role of the sample as well, like coming into the neighborhood, trying to put the residents' defenses down so that the gentrification and the invasion can occur. And so with the Africa shirt too, is just playing on like, I'm y'all, And look, we're like you all, we want to, you know, it's the facade of what we think you are. Let's put all this paraphernalia on you, and this is what we think you are. We're gonna send this person, as our representative into your area, to help us do our dirty work. And so that's how I read these, which I feel like is powerful. But again, art is a lot of interpretation by the viewer, and you know, it resonates differently.
So in keeping with me being a rapper, that's a double entendre. So y'all know what that means. That's a double entendre. 2 meanings. We're killing it. All right.
Chris and I were noticing and talking about that the signs before have the colors of intake cloth. So like that visual subliminal acceptance. Because it's like, oh, these must be good people because these colors, you know, represent us, right? So yeah, that's a little.
The runner was made to look kind of like tapestry because of that too. And then the colors of the zip ties mean something too. Lorraine, you want to shout out, at least from the back of the movie, what the colors of the zip ties, which are red, black, and white, mean? No, she doesn't, for the record. And so I will do the dirty work. So the piece is mostly combined with black zip ties to represent the binding and the connection of the Black community, and how we need to stick together. Where there was like some bigger gaps in the area, it's talking about the liveliness and spirit in keeping us together. It's the bloodlines that are keeping us together, and the cultural strength. And then the fringe of the area is the infiltration of outsiders. And so the predominant race that is infringing on the Black and brown areas. And so there is a lot of meaning in this piece. As simple as it might look, it was very, again, an intensive piece. But back to monkeys and signage, I'm going to introduce Michael Popage, who is not a Milwaukee-based artist. He is from
I'm from Chicago, but I'm based in Cincinnati, which is why I'm late, so I apologize.
So I'm going to let Michael take over and talk about his pieces before we jump on to other artists.
Okay, sure. All right, so I'm just going to start with a story because that's the easiest way to kind of explain how I got here. So I am an avid traveler. Before the pandemic, I spent a lot of years in Asia. And while I was in Asia, I was with a gentleman who called everyone a monkey. And he was my host, and I was offended. But because he was my host, I wasn't in a place where I felt like I could say something. So after a conversation and some drinks and confirmation that, you know, there was a mutual respect, I asked him, you know, what's up with this monkey thing? And I explained to him how I received that word, you know, how I understand that, what I understand that meaning would be, where it came from, why it was created, how it was used, how it made me feel when I heard it. He said, no, I think it's important to say that this man was Chinese Malaysian, so he was removed from the black and white politics of the United States, right? Never been to America, doesn't even care to visit. No, it's not about color, it's about behavior. He said that a monkey is someone who comes into a room and throws shit everywhere. He said a monkey is someone who can't interact with other humans. A monkey disrupts the harmony of the situation. And although I understood that in the context of his Asian lens, it still made me cringe when I heard him say it thereafter. So the next day he takes me, we go out, we go into a place, we have a few drinks, and he leans over to me and he says, you should paint the white monkey. And I was like, instantly I had 4 images in my head that would work. But in my head, I'm like, well, I don't want this work to be racist, right? I mean, although I don't think I can be racist because this doesn't support me in being a racist, I didn't want to make racist work. So I thought about it like a science, you know, I needed 3 things that I could justify my use of this motif to describe white Americans. So in Asia, most of the monkeys you see walking on the street are white. They have blonde hair, they have white hair, they have pink skin, peach skin, pretty aggressive. And it's like, okay, that's one. And then if we just flipped it upside down and used the people who created this term to represent them as opposed to the people it was created for, that would be 2. But then I thought about that disruptor of the harmony of the situation, you know. Almost every indigenous population on the planet's harmony was disrupted by white people. The Portuguese, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, English. And so I started making paintings with Black men and white monkeys. And during the height of the pandemic, there was no space to exhibit the work because everything was closed down. We were all on a collective kind of punishment. But I was still wanting to make work, and I still wanted to talk about things that I thought was important. So on my block, I was living in an apartment. All the houses on my block were somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. And then within a season, there's a $450,000 house on my block, same side of the street, right? Within 3 months after that, they started building a 300-unit luxury apartment condominium across the street from me. And I noticed that all the other houses were going up for sale. And so I decided that, you know, although I couldn't personally do anything, I wanted to make artwork that addressed this. So I created the No Monkey Business street sign, which is the monkey in the circle with the line through. And I went to neighborhoods in Cincinnati initially, and I put these signs up. I dressed like a city worker. I took a video team, and no one paid me any attention. I put them up, and it was like I was invisible. And I put them up in neighborhoods that were either aggressively gentrified or partially gentrified, or, you know, with the, you know, the buildings that they paint prior to coming in, you know how that happens sometimes. And what happened was, you know, a lot of Black people got really upset, and a lot of white people too, actually, you know, got really uncomfortable. And I tried to figure out why. So I'm reading Reddit and Facebook and all of the social medias, and it turns out that, you know, we share this common kind of deep-rooted racial thought in connection to who a monkey and what a monkey is supposed to be. And the minute that the silhouette turned Black, you know, it became about Black people. You know, still works from a gentrification lens, you know, because it doubles as a whites only sign. But I use the Black silhouette because not almost every animal sign that exists, a deer, a cow, a koala, a kangaroo, they all have a Black silhouette, and we don't associate people or race to them. So I found it really odd that, you know, this monkey was, you know, they called the NAACP, they filed hate crime charges. The city came and took the poles out of the ground. They didn't just take the sign down, they took the poles out. And so it was this really big kind of issue. So I decided that I needed to kind of expand the signs and use different color silhouettes that were about the same thing, but then they became about place. Who belongs, who doesn't belong? Where could you imagine these signs being? When you see a warning sign with a Black silhouette, you know, is that a sign you would see like closer to the suburbs? You know, if you see a yield sign, does that mean that, you know, that gentrification process has started? If you see a stop sign, what does that mean? So I created a variety of signs, and, you know, we often talk about living in 2 different Americas with 2 different sets of rules, but the one place where all the rules apply the same way are in traffic, right? So a traffic sign dictates a certain behavior. When you change, you know, how you understand that sign with the silhouette of a monkey, something really special happens. What you do is you project your own bias onto these signs. And I think that that's a very important thing. You know, that conversation that you have with the sign is unique to you. You know, what you see, you know, you might not see a monkey, but if you did see a monkey, then you saw a monkey. You know, that's something that you have to deal with. You might not have thought about Black people when you saw the silhouette. You might not have thought about white people. You might have thought it was a joke and something that you would see at a zoo. You know, it all depends on the lens that you go through. But for me, these were created to go up in communities and in neighborhoods where I see people being pushed out because of their socioeconomic standing, you know. And so I wound up here. I met Fatima. I don't know how. My friend Sierra introduced us vicariously, and we had a conversation and realized that we had this mutual kind of disdain for this practice, and I'm just really glad to be here. One of the beautiful things about these signs, though, is that they also, you know, in creating an alternate reality of who a monkey can be, you know, in the 3/5, you know, anyone who's treated humans the way that, you know, we've been treated historically, you know, has to turn off a part of their humanity. So, you know, the accuracy of the 3/5 of a human being, the monkey is more closely connected to, you know, like our enslavers, you know, and so I just think that there's an alternate reality that exists that we live in that I just want to share with people, because we talk a lot about equity, inclusion, and diversity, but I think equity, inclusion, and diversity isn't about giving us something, but it's about taking away something, you know. It's having an equal share, equitable share in the trauma, you know. I mean, we inherited trauma and you inherited wealth, you know. It's easy to give away wealth when you have it all, but it's very difficult to walk away with an equitable share of the baggage that we carry due to no fault of our own, you know, due to no consequence of our own. So it's a lot to think about. These actually function like real street signs. So if you take a picture with the flash, it's a pretty, you know, interesting picture you'll get. When you put them up, when you put high beams on them, they work perfectly fine. So they're meant to be fun too. As serious as they are, there is a fun element. So feel free to break the rules, take some pictures with the flash, and, you know, have a good time. Thank you.
In some of the last previous exhibitions, there was a lot more inclusion with photography and videography. And some of the artists who that is their more consistent medium talk about it's a closer and more innate social practice. It's more accessible and it's big with documented reality, whose reality, and trying to equalize that. So you will see in this exhibition a lot of photography. Some of them were hired to document protests for our protection. In case something happens, there's more than one story. Some of them have turned the protest into like a mini video or film. And then some are capturing life surrounding this topic in different cities. And it's a hybrid of film, photography, and it's also a blend of what goes on in the exterior space and interior space. And with that, I'm going to transition to the artist Pedro Gutierrez, who's sitting behind me. So Pedro, would you mind telling us the name and the concept behind the piece?
Show again.
Speak up, boss, speak up.
Yeah. I'm Pedro Ender Gutierrez. That's my piece right there. It's a video and installation piece that I started last summer after the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, my hometown of Minneapolis. Point of the piece, or originally, the reason why I started was to process pain and the anger that I was feeling at the time. And I did that by filming the area, the surrounding area where this murder took place, and interviewing my grandmother who lives in the area within eyesight of that intersection. I didn't really have a direction when I started it, but as I went along, it turned into a project that was focused on urging many aspects of discrimination, racism, gentrification, so on, to something that is a more cohesive phenomenon that all of these aspects play a part of. Yeah, the video. I think the video, instead of presenting an overarching narrative about what happened or what is happening, instead is intended to produce context to interpret what's happening. And the installation you see is comprised of suitcases and some pages from a publication I found while working on the piece in my mother's basement. Publication is entitled Minneapolis Negro Profile, published in the early 70s, basically trying to establish some of the progress that had happened at the time, civil rights movement. And pages you see covering the top suitcase are also the same pages you see crumpled on the floor, sent or explain my feelings on the publication and where we're at today. Yeah, that's it for now.
Pedro's piece is a longer video installation. It's about 32 minutes. We will be working on having a film screening here with the screen behind us so people can actually sit down in case they don't have time to sit with the piece. It's very powerful, and it shows a dynamic with him and his grandmother, documenting her transition from the north to the south, how difficult it was to get housing, how they lived apart from their mom across the street with growing up, and you'll see an article around here. So I have various articles about some of the strong gentrification going on, but how the expressway, once his grandmother got housing, stable housing, expressway came, and then they were through eminent domain kicked out the house so that they could build the expressway. And so transient and homelessness common with gentrification, displacement is all very real and aggressive. Milwaukee here and all major cities, the expressway, as accessible as it is, it was devastating to Black and brown communities and intentionally placed in those areas too. And so I welcome you to really sit with Pedro's piece. He does balance and straddle the exterior, the environment with the police brutality, which is a result of gentrification too, because the police are now here to control population, to protect property. That's it. That's their lineage. When Black people were property, that was their job too. So that's the lineage of the modern day police too, where they were formerly slave captured. And so the exterior and the interior, his dialogue with his grandmother is in the interior space, and that resonated with the other side of the exhibition, where we intentionally created this intimate interior milieu. I call it Christina's room, but it has more than Christina Oscar's work in it. It's got some of the other artists that are on Zoom right now that we'll pull in now. But Christina was actually displaced. Her building was actually torn down, and she's been documenting that, and memories and behaviors and activities associated with living there. And now if I didn't over talk or explain your piece, you want to talk to us about your room?
Yeah. Thank you for the room, by the way. Oh my gosh. So hi, I'm Christina. And as Fatima said, yeah, I was displaced from the zip code 53204 in Walker's Point. I'm trying to collect where to start with the story. And I guess I'll open with two, like after this, I really invite a one-on-one dialogue, because I am well aware that I'm about to leave out a lot of details, because it was, one, it's fresh, this happened 2 months ago, and well, I'm still processing. So I guess I'll start with the place I was displaced from, and what's inspiring this piece is, if there's any emotion that I found there, was great independence, independence of like getting back on like my mental health and just feeling a sense of ownership. Because I was paying $500 a month, I could afford that, and that felt of the most confidence that I could have my own place. It was the first place I had my own kitchen, my own bathroom, my own bedroom, my own living room, everything was mine. So the piece I'll highlight in there is called Goodnight Bruce. So it's a really, it's a piece that unraveled, and it started with a friend asking, well, are you gonna have a farewell party? I had access to what was between my apartment and La Fuente. It was a giant garage, and I lived really well for 2 years having access to that roof, and invited all my friends to come on it. So the trade-off was people that were invited to the party, I took their Polaroid, and then they had to take a picture of that Polaroid. And then somewhere in the house of a detail they liked or whatnot. So that's what you're seeing there, is that documentation from that event. And in short, it has two audiences. It's you all and the people that lived that through that house with me, and it's a celebration that we lived a wonderful life there, and we will continue to go live on a wonderful life. And to the folks that can stomach displacing people, it's a reminder to them that we lived a beautiful life, and we will continue to live a beautiful life. Because if anything that I'm processing, it's the last detail I will say is my official notice that I received in the mail was I was given 18 days. I had proximity to people that knew, and I had a far longer heads up, and I knew this was going to happen, but legally 18 days. And I'll remind you, the $500 rent, that's still kind of a comfort zone. So now I have a roommate for different reasons, like it aligned, but as a single person in Milwaukee, it's near impossible to find a place that's going to be your own. So that was taken away from me. So, and I guess on top of it, the other takeaway, where I'm really coming from, like this human level, I feel belittled and I feel dismissed in this whole experience, because it even got to, I was talking to the developers like through email, because they were offering to help me find a place. I did receive $500 in Visa cards to help me move. And all of it, I felt that's where the dismiss comes from, because they're like, we're sorry you have to move. And it's like, just missing the mark. And I even saw one of them in person, and like, I guess I'm watching me process it in real time, like, because I was so nice to her. So, but again, the takeaway, you're seeing 32 of some of the people that either I knew prior to moving to Walker's Point, or maybe it's their first time at the house. But my goal is when you walk past a building now being demolished, you think about one of those pieces and you recognize just the life that was lived there. And that's the main work that I'm most proud of, I'm most excited, and I feel just like the most support, and to be able to like have this tangible example here, and to have like so much context. I actually really appreciated that you kind of started with the range of emotion people might be feeling, and I really love that you said confusion, because it was something that I've had to confront, and that's there's a whole tangent I could go on that as well, but that's my piece. So the human aspect of it is what I think is important, because if people saw people as humans, that wouldn't have happened. And that's, I think everyone else has said that in another way, but that's all I can wrap my head around is like, I need people to know that I'm a person that did that too. So that's
Venus building is gone, in Zimu, at La Fuente is gone. These are all like right across the street from each other in the same area, for one solid major luxury development that's coming over there. Another person capturing, I'm jumping cities now, is capturing development and redistricting and gentrification is Hiram Lee, who is Korean born, but she's living and working in Chicago right now. And so Hiram, do you want to talk about your 4 or 5 pieces in the show? They're paper works, so her works actually look delicate to me. Woven to like 11 other people, they look very delicate, but they're talking about like very heavy subject matter, and she works directly with residents and youth in these areas that she's documenting. So you want to tell us about your pieces?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for introducing my work, Fatima. I also wanted to share a little bit of story about the background.
Which one? Can you maybe if I turn it this way here?
Yeah. The photograph that we're showing, the triptych one, the weaving photograph.
I'm sorry. Can you, I'm gonna try to repeat what you say because the speaker is not loud enough right now.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. The audience won't be able to hear you because my speaker is not loud enough right now.
Okay. So yeah, the pieces that I'm showing is particularly talking about Cabrini Green neighborhood in Chicago. And like Fatima said, I'm originally from South Korea. I've been in Chicago over 7 years. Unlike South Korea, unlike America, I think South Korea is a monoethnic country. So this racial diversity is pretty fascinating to me to think about in conjunction with racism and so on, and gentrification, because in terms of gentrification in South Korea, usually it happens with the classism, but in America, it happened in racism, which is totally different. So I think it's interesting to think about how, this gentrification is global movement, but yet is very different. in terms of this power and politics and many different kind of details. So even though I'm looking through the lens of Cabrini Green neighborhood in Chicago, I wanted to expand a little bit more about this globalized gentrification and so on. So going back to the Cabrini Green, so I live pretty close to Cabrini Green neighborhood. Now I'm living in South Side, but when I was living close by Cabrini Green neighborhood, I've heard from my friend that it used to be a project. And I could not believe that it used to be a project because now it's so gentrified and it's so clean. And there's a lot of bizarre space are going on in that neighborhood. And I love to go to the site visiting. And so I visit the site there and I found the first Cabrini Green row house that is still exist. And it's still in the part of the lawsuit. And so I start to go there. And sometimes they open that vacant lot so that I can peek in and see what's going on. And I could meet the people and then ask about the history of the neighborhood. But then I also found out that there's one church that belongs to Cabrini Green. And there was a mural in front of the church called All of Mankind, the four figures, which is Jesus, Dr. King, Malcolm X, and Frank, were that four figures are all intertwined each other in front of the facade of the church. But then unfortunately, that mural whitewashed because all of the Cabrini Green neighborhood community had to push back because of the gentrification. So to me, that kind of story was very, I was so struck by that story because it's almost like to me, it's a counter narrative. And as international artist from South Korea, I always learn about white American history. So this is such a different different narrative that I wanted to also talk about it because I think to me, building a healthy allyship is so important part of my practice. And so I've been, researching and meeting people around this mural in the neighborhood since 2016, so that I can build the community with the Chicago Public Art Group and also meet a lot of muralists to think about the Cabrini Green neighborhood, this All of Mankind mural. So basically the photograph and the artist's book represent the, I think to me, I was thinking a lot about the fragmentation of the history from the Cabrini Green neighborhood. And so the weaving itself is a lot of the fragmentation of the images. But then once it started to do a weaving, it became very ambiguous imagery. It became a little bit more abstract. And I start to think about how this power implement into the urban planning and became so, became abstract form. And other two artist books are a little bit more, imagery driven because I use a lot of map imagery, collect from early 1900, like I think 1910. And the map itself represent, how Chicago is so segregated by race. So that also give an implication of, this power dynamics and how the segregation shaped by, redlining and mapping and so on. And I think it's really interesting to me to think about the whole, segregational history of Chicago, looking back to, Daniel Burnham, and, later on, Mayor Daley, he announced the Chicago 21, and then he started to renew all of the city plan and start to remove a lot of project in Chicago. So yeah, I think to me, this is kind of like creating learning space altogether. Although I'm not a part of the community, but then I think I wanted to expand the larger dialogue of the gentrification.
Thank you. So I'm going to transition to Celeste Concertos. Both Hyder and Celeste I first worked with, exhibiting the last exhibitions in This is America. Both of their mediums were the first time I've exhibited type of work, which is the paperwork and handmade books. And trying to also force people to be interactive with art as well, because in, I guess, more traditional settings for galleries and museums, you can't touch anything. And they are welcoming you, inviting you, encouraging you, and requiring you to touch them. You actually have to open them to get the information, see the map, see the redistricting, see how the zones are applied, or read the narratives and how they apply it. Because Celeste had some cookbooks in the last one talking about one, erasure and family erasure, but also ingredients that go into family and recipes. And then ironically, and I paired them together last time, and I'm pairing them together in like kind of the home space. This time, you all can't see, but I welcome, when you come, you'll see you're next to each other again. Celeste also has maps and books or atlas, and this current show, the Signs of the Time show, with Hyder's pieces. So Celeste, can you tell us about your two works that are included in this show?
Yes, thank you so much, Fatima and her team of amazing people and this entire exhibition. I just want to acknowledge that we're all sitting here in traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee land, some of the original displaced people of the land that we now inhabited. And the Stolen Atlas it's inspired by the truth. The more research I do as a grad student, the more insight I get to question who's the authority of what. And the Stolen Atlas is questioning, do you know where you are? Do you know why you're there? Do you know what time it is? A lot of people don't even know what time it is, let alone with where they're standing. Where are they really standing? And so that's really the question of that, as well as questioning who is the authority of who drew this line on this map? Who authorized that person to draw this land out the way they did? And so it's questioning who's the author? Who's the author of the land that you're standing on, that you live on, that you drink the water? And it's really just about that. And then, and so much more, right? Because gentrification is not just about zoning. It's so much more personal, and it's I was letting out a lot of aggression in that atlas. I went through periods of different emotions, and the map that I showed for this show is a collection that's going to be a bigger collection of states of the Americas, because Mexico is also the United States of Mexico. And so there's 31 states there. And so I'm starting with California, and I'll be working my way across the North America, going into Mexico and then into Central America. And it's questioning or it's not questioning anything. It's saying, do you even know where you are? Who bought this? It was stolen. It was, built by stolen people, and just remembering the truth. And so my inspiration is just that truth of, do you know where you are? And to always question that. Oh, Mateo, thank you.
So plan on like knowing where you are and what you're atop of. One of the pieces in the show too includes another like plastic pollution sign, and it's I actually found it in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it says developer to avoid bankruptcy, forced auction, and it's like I got off the car, I was riding the car in my city and my sister, and I took it. I was like, this is absurd. Oh, the developer is the victim. Wow. And so I created this piece. It's called Double Whammy, because with this sign is, you're supposed to be saving this person who's usually the enforcer of the trauma in these neighborhoods. But also it plays on, like, if you excavate certain areas, a lot of buildings are built on top of old homes. And so you will find personal belongings, artifacts, and what have you from another family, from another people, existence, bones, remnants, and what have you. And so that's what that piece represents, is like whose belongings get to be saved and salvaged, who gets to be saved and salvaged. And then when you do excavate and find out where you are and who you are, what you will actually find in that process. So I'm not sure what other artists might be online. 1 second. I think that's it. Those are all the artists that are present for the talk. I welcome you to visit more. There's a student artist who's featured in the show. His name is Mercado. He ironically included a statement from me that was published somewhere. And he, a part of his community arts project was focusing and documenting gentrification in his neighborhood, which ironically is Walker's Point as well. And he tied it with his graphic design practice. And so his project is called The Business of Gentrification. And he made logos representing different business aspects that play into gentrification. So, the real estate, bars, clubs for certain demographics that don't match the germane residents in the area, cafes, art galleries, but it's called No Respect Art Galleries. And he's very explicit about protecting the galleries or the art spaces in those areas that actually represent people from the area and provide access to arts and what have you to the people of the area. And in some like clubs or what have you. So his project is documented in this piece, in this exhibition, along with a Charlotte-based artist who has some collaging, some really powerful collaging of 3 different areas, primarily Black areas in Charlotte that have been gentrified. They ironically might look more suburban because of the southern landscape, but they were Black areas and they have been taken over. So you'll see like the fencing blocking the kids from the new construction and commercial real estate across the streets, and different signals and changes in those neighborhoods. Who else? I think we captured most of the artists, so yeah. And then also around the space are news articles about major projects. They're primarily, they expand from the north to the south side and some on the west side of Milwaukee. I don't have all the cities because I could probably go to the whole walls with everyone's projects and issues, but they are closely tied to the works that they are next to. And so there are a lot of protest posters, original protest posters, a part of this exhibition, highlighting some culprits like the mayor of Milwaukee and his contribution to this issue, and offering people who are displaced to live with him, and some of the projects that he's supporting, like the streetcar, which ironically the young student is talking about how it's affecting not only his neighborhood, it's affecting our neighborhood, and we are on polar opposite ends of the city. And so it's a very dense exhibition. It is a hybrid of for sale pieces and then items that are not for sale, because they have some kind of memory-based attachments, future use, and or the desire to preserve them in a more institutional setting, so that a global audience can have access to them versus a private buyer. And so we welcome you to come. Oh, last artist that I did forget about is another Chicago-based artist named Marvin Tate. I work with him a lot. He's a self-taught artist. He has some huge home dioramas constructed in the exhibition out of found objects, and they're primarily documenting houses on the west side of Chicago. And they question, who is this structure for? Like one of the dioramas says, we want you back. And then it's a distressed building, but the sign is asking like, who is that you that we want back? And they're really powerful, and they're very extremely detailed, like inside the buildings too. And so again, we welcome you to come engage with the work, ask questions. I mean, you can challenge your perspective if you want. You're welcome to do that. You know, if you have specific questions with the artists, I can put you in touch with artists as well. We do this gallery and the neighborhood association are very actively involved in fighting gentrification going on over here in the north side, and partnering with south side organizations as well. We have some forums that if you live in the states, because there's a divide between the city and state on how things get done, that you can sign. These are some initial 10-point plans to offset some of the gentrification and hold developers accountable, as well as the city, and giving residents first right of refusal about what goes on in their neighborhoods. And then we have some old protest information that have been translated from English, Spanish, Hmong, and Arabic, so we can make sure everyone is getting the proper information and showing solidarity between all these people, these vulnerable populations that is being affected here in Milwaukee, because some, like on the west side of the city here, you might feel like, and I feel like it's one of the most diverse areas in the true sense of diversity of what you will find over there, but the commonality is it's a highly impoverished area. So all these different cultures being displaced, and the commonality is that they're too poor to do much about it. And so we are trying to speak out and empower everyone and inform them, and not be, take out the confusing language and misleading language about what's really going on. And so that they can hopefully say, we shall not be removed, or we shall not be moved, and get rid of these people or vote them out or what have you, so that they have protections and their human rights are still being respected and honored. So that is the close of the artist talk. I know it went long, I apologize. I will keep the gallery open extra until y'all feel like y'all need to flee. Thank you for all the artists who called in. Thank you to the SI and the Neighborhood Association for participating, doing the project and calling in and expressing all this information. Again, this is being recorded. I will release it, so whatever did not hear, the camera caught it, and that you can go back and you can also share and empower and teach yourself about somebody else's perspective and what they're going through. So thank you.
Fatima, can I just share right quick the gentleman's question on?
Oh, any any questions? Somebody had a question online?
Right, he had on forbearance in terms of be aware of the scams. And I know that at 9 o'clock on CBS, they're going to talk about that, but here are two different resources for him to use. They have one forbearance under the CARES Act, notice of trustee sale, and then it says beware of rescue foreclosures from the FDIC. So that's fdic.gov, and then covidhomeassist.org. And I know that the older persons also said to call and report those signs. If they aren't coming to you with these sort of stamps in them, or you aren't calling them, I would not, I mean, unless you just want to see what those people are and privatize your number, I would not answer those people about helping me out. I would go to the sources that we have. And you do have a person in front of you, Fatima, Mr. Sims, if you wave your hand, that know a lot about these two issues. So I wanted to bring that up to them. And I cannot reemphasize enough what the gentleman from Ohio said, the signs of gentrification. You all have pointed them out very well. And they talked about, here they talk about the different street things that happen, the different planters, just the different kinds of signs, different kinds of lightings. So they just list 7 different things that you can tell your neighborhood is about to undergo gentrification, and you may not even notice it. So, and you all talked about the public transportation. So those are some, articles you can look up. And if there's anything else, I think Mr. Sims had something he would add to that, I'm sure. But I thank you for that.
Can you those links in the chat, and I'll save them, and I will not send out.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll include it in the distribution.
Will do so. Thank you.
Thank you. You good? You still got a question?
For Ms. Lee, but
Hiram, are you available to still answer a question?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if she can hear me, but my question is, are you aware of the social engineering of Habiti Green with the rats in the cage experiment of the 1950s?
Sorry, I don't think I heard everything. Maybe Fatima, can you translate it a little
He
bit?
said, are you aware of the social engineering for Cabrini Green around the
Rats in the cage.
rats in the cages?
Stacks in the cage.
Stacks in the cages?
Rats.
Stacks in the cage.
Oh, I don't think I.
From the 50s.
No.
Now you have some additional homework. Also, Candyman, the remake of that thriller is based in Cabrini Green. It was one of the scariest movies I've seen in my life, and I'm very excited. I'm gonna be seeing it again on Sunday, the new one. But you should check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I should. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. I will get the information from the guest, and I'll give it to you.
Oh yeah, awesome.
All right. Any other questions for anyone? All right. Thank you, everyone on Zoom, and thank you all present. Thank you.